Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my TBR check-in and book haul for the month of January. So we started off the year with 119 books on the physical TBR. How did we do? Let's take a look at my brand new 2023 TBR balance sheet. So I read only 8 books for the month, which is probably the lowest number of books I've read in any one month for the last, since COVID started. So maybe I'm getting back down to my pre-COVID reading amounts. We'll see. Total read for the month, 8 books. 5 of those I read off my physical shelves. I brought in 7 books total, and I unhauled 1 book. And I didn't really unhaul a book, but I had a book on my TBR that was a field guide, not a field guide, it was like a, oh, let me get that book for you to show it for you. I meant to show it, hold on. Okay, so the book that I removed from my TBR was this one, Off the Beaten Path, A Guide to Unique Places in Maine. And this is a book that is, I've been flipping through it, and it's not really a book that you read straight through. It's more of a, like, I want to visit a certain place, and so you look up, you know, hiking trails and things like that. So this is a reference book, not a book that I'm going to read straight through. So I'm removing that one from my physical TBR. So that's an unhaul of 1. And then that leaves me with a monthly total of +1, bringing my physical TBR back up to 120, which is where I started in 2022. But it's still only the beginning of February. So honestly, a lot of the books that I brought in for the month were books that are for projects that I'm doing this year in 2023, or for reading that I was doing in January. So let's just get into what those books were that I brought into my home, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm not worried about that +1 for the month of January. So a book that I brought in last month is Desperation and Death by Robb. This is like book number, I don't know, 54 or something in the series. This is the book that was published last September 2022, and is the next book that I need to read in the series. So I saw this at Sam's Club and I grabbed it. It was a really cheap price, like $7 or something. So I'll be reading that one quite soon, I'm sure. The next 4 books I picked up for my Octavia Butler reading project. So they are, this is the first 2 books in the Patternist series. So this is like the first series that Olivia Butler published, I believe. So this is Wild Seed by Octavia E. Butler, and then Mind of My Mind. So this is book 1 and book 2. This one actually I think was published last, so, but I think it's supposed to be read first in this series. So I'm going to start with Wild Seed and then Mind of My Mind. And if I like those 2 books, I'll pick up the next 2 books in that. It's a quartet, that series. And then I also picked up the Parable of the Sower duology. So it's book 1, Parable of the Sower, and book 2, Parable of the Talents. I've already read Parable of the Sower, so that will be a reread for me. And then I'm really interested to get into book 2 in this duology, because I've actually heard that Parable of the Talents is even better than Parable of the Sower, which I love Parable of the Sower. So these are like dystopian future with a main female protagonist. So I'm really, really excited to get back into this one. I'm not sure what the Patternist series is about. I haven't read any of the books in this series yet. So I know it's science fiction, because that's what Octavia Butler writes. So excited to dive into those for my Octavia Butler project. The last 2 books from my January book haul are books that I bought and read in January. I actually finished one of them yesterday, but on February the 3rd, but that's okay. It's close enough to January. The first one that I actually bought and read in the month of January is Breathless, The Scientific Race to Defeat a Deadly Virus by David Quammen. I buddy read this one with Doris, and this is a science nonfiction all about how we learned about the COVID-19 virus, all the different individuals that were involved in that, like lots and lots and lots of scientists all over the world who were studying infectious disease, or were studying viruses that transmit from animals to humans, so zoonoses, the research around those, and then the research around how we discovered the genetic the DNA sequences of viruses and things like that. So yeah, so this was a book that I bought in January and read in January. I'm not supposed to be reviewing this. I'm like immediately wanting to launch in and talk about this book. But so this is science nonfiction. Also, just to note, this is on the BookTube Prize list of 48 books to start the nonfiction round. And then the last book that I brought in and read in January was Babel by RF Kuang. This is a fantasy, dark fantasy, sort of dark academia novel written by a woman of color. And I've never read anything by RF Kuang before, but I was interested in this book because of the dark fantasy, dark academia aspect. It's about translation and the what's the word I want? The use of translation in order to create magic. And there's this group of students at this school in, it's in Oxford, but it's a fictional, Babel is the school of translation within Oxford. So that part is fictional. Oxford obviously is not fictional. And this is a, sort of an alternate history because this takes place in like the mid 1800s, I believe. And so the themes of the book are around colonialism and the impacts of capitalism and free trade on all of these countries that the Western powers, particularly Britain, were sort of doing to these places in order to maintain their empires. So it's a novel of empire and colonialism and fantasy, like magic systems based around translation and this alternate history. So that was the last book that I brought in January, and I did just finish it in February, the beginning of February, February 3rd. So those are the books that I brought in the month of January, and I'm very excited. So I only have, that means that there are only 5 of them, 5 of the 7 that are actually still left to be read out of that collection. So that's not bad. That's not bad at all. I'm really pleased with that. I hope that you have all brought in some great books into your life in the month of January. I hope you'll tell me about a book that you've recently brought into your home in the comment section down below. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.